Well, the threat of tariffs by U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has a focus on the Canadian border and border security. And the issue of port police is once again in the news. It seems more people are talking about it, including BC Premier David Eby and Delta Mayor George Harvey, who we spoke with on the program last week.
Just the lack of security measures at our ports across Canada, especially in Delta Port, infiltration of organized crime, challenges with it, controlling access. Our Delta police can't even get in the port through the fence unless they're actually invited. We've had a reduction of policing services since 1997 when they disbanded the port police and didn't replace it with anything that was totally effective.
That is Delta Mayor George Harvey talking about the dismantling of Ports Police back in 1997. Now, back then, Ujjal Dosanjh, who was at one time BC's, a member of Parliament as well as BC's Premier, he was Attorney General then, and he was extremely critical of the decision by the federal government to disband the police. He said it was dangerous and reckless. Well, Ujjal Dosanjh joins us this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Here we are so many years later. Does it surprise you at all that we are having this conversation once again?
No, I'm not surprised. Even at that time, there was gun running, there was drugs, there were luxury cars being, sent through the port. In the 10 years from 86 to 96, that's 1986 to 1996, there were $1.25 billion worth of drugs that were seized. And that just gives you some sense of how important Ports Police was. And I was quite then familiar with the issue and, not so now. But it was important and we fought hard, but, it was federal government's decision. The port police was funded by the Vancouver Port Corporation then. And obviously, Vancouver Port Corporation is making more money now as a result, yet they're not spending that money on security at all for all Canadians. And now the issue is obviously a lot more important because of Trump's threat of tariffs. Obviously, drugs are coming in from the States into Canada as well and vice versa. And the recent reports, including a piece by CBC, that Canada has now become not just a place where drugs come in from China, US, or other places, but Canada has become a manufacturer and exporter of illicit drugs. I mean, that is scary. You need more policing, you need more resources, and this decision at that time went counter to everything we knew at that time.
Yeah, and we've seen, even in the interior of the province, drug factories that have connections to Mexican cartels.
Oh, absolutely, and it's scary. It's scary for our future. It is, we should pay a lot more attention to these issues. We should have coordinated law enforcement, and the ports should put some money back into policing. Local governments and provinces can't handle the burden that comes with the federal trade. I mean, this is a federal jurisdiction, and they should pump more money into policing, whatever the permutation or combination is of, how that police should look like. They should put more resources into policing in the ports right across the country, particularly in British Columbia.
The city of Delta, as we heard from Mayor Harvey, has been calling for the reestablishment of the port police for a while. They brought a motion to the Union of BC Municipalities, which was endorsed by members, the mayors and councillors across the province. Mayor Harvey told us last week that Delta Police, the municipal police force in Delta, doesn't even have permission to enter port property unless they've been invited.
Oh, well, because there are two different jurisdictions, because federal authority, usually says to everybody else, don't come in unless we tell you. And that's why you need to have a clear, demarcated lines of authority where police can enter these places, and there has to be a coordinated law enforcement on the ports in British Columbia. And I'm surprised that that David Eby hasn't been asking for it for some time. Obviously now everybody is awake to the threat posed by tariffs, Trump tariffs and the like, and therefore everybody's conscious. But this has been a problem for a long, long time. The federal government has been remiss in this, and our province hasn't been asking for more, and we should be asking for more.
We saw Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Friday travel to Florida to meet with President-elect Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Apparently, what came out of that meeting was some discussion of increasing Canada's border security by use of such things as helicopters and drones and so on. No mention, though, of reinstating the Port Police. Would that not be an easy win for the Prime Minister right now to say we're going to bring back Port Police?
Oh, absolutely. Helicopters are obviously more visible and therefore easily done, perhaps, but costly. But the real work is done by the police right on the scene. And if we don't have that element of policing back in action at the ports as the goods go and come in, we're not really doing very much to deal with the issue. We shouldn't just be doing it because of Trump. We should be doing it because of ourselves. I'm glad that are now awake to this issue, but we should have never let ports police go. And as soon as possible, we should reintroduce the idea of port policing in British Columbia, and it's very, very important for our safety and security.
And those numbers that you talked about from, the 90s, that 10-year period with $1.25 billion worth of illegal drugs going through the ports and $2 million worth of luxury cars, how much worse has that become? Because those are still two major issues that are, two major issues when it comes to organized crime.
No, it's probably much worse. We don't know the figures, but we know figures coming into Canada. Like someone was just arrested in Canada, bringing in $1 billion worth of drug into the country, into Canada. So just imagine the contraband going through Vancouver Port, for instance, or coming through Vancouver Port when there is no policing on site. It is really serious. It's really worrisome that the governments have not paid much attention to this issue. It is a very important issue for our future. I mean, just look at the downtown east side. Look at various other cities. I mean, you have people that are killing themselves every day with illicit drugs.
Ujjal, we'll have to leave it there this morning. Always good to speak with you. Thank you for the time.
Good to be with you.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye now. That is Ujjal Dosanjh, former Premier of BC, also former Member of Parliament and former BC Attorney General. It was back in 1996. He wrote a letter to then Transport Minister David Anderson pleading to keep the Port Police in place. Back then, the Liberal government saw fit to disband them.